Thank you for joining us on the long form story. I'm Niranjan. Tonight at 9 p.m. on the long form story, 4 of the biggest headlines from the last week. And what a week it's been, ladies and gentlemen. The stories that dominated the headlines. And on the show tonight, first up, the biggest headline, the doctors of death. The chilling truth behind the terror doctors who engineered the blasts in the national capital. We unravel their network, break down their handlers, expose the plot that was stitched together in Delhi NCR. Second, on the show tonight, Nithari Betrayal, how the man long accused in one of India's most horrifying crimes has been acquitted. We revisit the case, the lapses, and the unanswered questions. And then the Dhaka stress. Dhaka is burning, violence spiraling on the streets of Bangladesh as the nation braces for the verdict on Sheikh Hasina. We bring you the politics, the rage, and the high stakes. And finally, from Mumbai, a child predator, Qureshi, has been freed. Despite rape being proven, a convicted predator has walked out in Mumbai. We go deep into how a system failed the victim again. All that and more tonight on the long form story. Let's get started. Tonight, as Delhi still reels from the 10/11 blast carnage, 12 lives lost, over 30 injured, related explosion in Srinagar, 2 cities shaken. Investigators say the conspiracy behind it was much darker than imagined. What really happened in Delhi that morning that led to the blast in the evening, and how does it all lead back to the module of terror doctors? From a white Hyundai i20 that exploded in the heart of Delhi. Now that car's trail to the Al Falah campus in Faridabad, Delhi NCR. Key nodes now point to what is being called the white collar jihad, a network where trusted doctors doubled up as terrorists. Police even call it one of India's deadliest bio-terror plans that was hatched, if you look at the module that's coming out of Gujarat. So who funded this module? There were reportedly 10 safe houses, multiple cities, Pakistan-based handlers in control. Who sheltered these terrorists? Why were Faridabad, Saharanpur, Delhi NCR region the planning hubs? Why did the Al Falah campus become a Jaish-e-Mohammed den? And then a chilling twist with a ricin bioweapon plot that's now emerging in Gujarat. How close were we in India to mass casualties? Is it linked to the Delhi terror doctors? Is Gujarat linked to Delhi? We connect all these dots on the long form story tonight.
Hey, Nago! Nago! ये लाइव चांदनी चौक के लाल किले में गाड़ी में बम था। किसकी गाड़ी में बम था? चल 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 चल। उधर अपने भाई हो गए, यहाँ पे मेरा भाई यही तो खड़ा होना है। ये 4 नंबर गेट के पीछे ही है। ये गाड़ी में ही थे क्या? बम ब्लास्ट हुआ है लाल किले के सामने अभी।
Faces of terror hidden behind white lab coats. A university facing questions and a founder with a history that refuses to stay buried.
मैडम, ये एक दुखद घटना हुई है। यूनिवर्सिटी इस चीज़ के लिए बहुत दुख में है, सदमे में है। और यूनिवर्सिटी के लोग ये चाहते हैं कि जितने भी लोगों ने ये हरकत की है, इतने नोबेल प्रोफेशन में आने के बाद उन लोगों ने ये हरकत की है, आइसोलेटेड वाली हरकत की है, उनके खिलाफ पूर्णतः कार्रवाई होनी चाहिए। जो लोग इसको उन लोगों को रेडिकलाइज किया है, जिन लोगों ने भी किया है, उनके खिलाफ भी पूरी कार्रवाई होनी चाहिए।
As the Faridabad link intensifies to the Delhi blast of 10/11, Al-Falah's establishment and finances have once again come under the scanner.
लाल किले के बाहर ब्लास्ट हुआ और उसके बाद से अल-फलाह यूनिवर्सिटी के जो लिंक लगातार स्टैब्लिश हो रहे हैं उसकी जांच तमाम एजेंसीज कर रही हैं, लेकिन हरियाणा पुलिस इस समय दिल्ली में पहुंची थी और तमाम जो इन्वेस्टिगेशन है हरियाणा पुलिस ने अल-फलाह यूनिवर्सिटी का जो दिल्ली रजिस्टर्ड ऑफिस है वहां पे पहुंची थी। उस दफ्तर के अंदर इस वक्त मेरी मौजूदगी है और आप तस्वीरों में देखेंगे कि दिल्ली पुलिस अभी भी यहाँ पर खड़ी हुई है, लेकिन हरियाणा पुलिस यहाँ पर आई थी और तमाम जो दस्तावेज है उन दस्तावेजों को खंगाला गया, दस्तावेज अपने साथ लेकर निकली है। लेकिन इस दफ्तर के अंदर की अगर मैं तस्वीर दिखाऊं तो एक बड़ा सा शेल आपको नजर आ जाएगा। इस यूनिवर्सिटी से जुड़े जो तमाम डॉक्यूमेंट्स हैं वो यहाँ पर है, एप्लीकेशन फॉर्म, डिग्री, डिप्लोमा फॉर्म के जो होल्डर्स हैं यहाँ पर है, लेकिन पुलिस के अलावा यहाँ पर और कोई नहीं है। एक शख्स है जिनसे इससे पहले मैं बात कर रहा था, वो बता रहे थे कि पुलिस यहाँ पर आई, हरियाणा पुलिस थी, लेकिन अंदर से दफ्तर किस तरीके का है वो तस्वीरें मैं आपको यहाँ पर दिखाऊंगा। दिल्ली पुलिस के कर्मी आपको यहाँ पर तैनात नजर आएंगे, लेकिन उसके अलावा कितने भी कमरों में आप चले जाओ यहाँ पर कोई मूवमेंट आपको नजर नहीं आएगी, ना ही कोई शख्स यहाँ पर आपको नजर आएगा।
Investigators are looking at the founder's past, especially a chit fund case that first raised red flags. A financial web that now sits uncomfortably close to extremist elements.
This particular premises has been under scanner ever since the terror module of Faridabad has been busted since morning 7 a.m. Today, several senior police officials gathered here inside the premises conducting serious search operations. They scanned through each and every possible CCTV footages. They scanned through the hostels. They scanned through the hospital. There were women senior police officials present as well. Interrogations took place. Fellow assistant professors have also been spoken, have also been interrogated as to certain the activities, the behaviors of Mujammil Shakil, the woman doctor, and also the prime suspect of the Delhi police in the Delhi blast case, Umar Nabi. It is expected that the search operations will continue for few hours, after which a proper deployment of police officials are also expected. Police officials are at the moment not ready to divulge as to how the investigation has panned out inside the premises, but they have ascertained that a proper investigation is underway. Proper searches are underway as we speak inside the Al-Falah University to understand and get more details with regards to this Faridabad terror module, which has strong links, police are suggesting can have strong links to the Delhi blast case that took place.
Just a few kilometers away, neighbors reveal suspicious activity at Royal Car Zone, a property linked to the suspects, where staff stayed for years.
ये अभी भी फैमिली के साथ यहाँ पे रह रहे हैं या यहाँ पे सिर्फ
ऑफिस है?
अच्छा, तो अभी क्या कोई अंदर हो सकता है?
हो सकता है स्टाफ इनका रहता हो, इनके यहाँ पे स्टाफ रहता हो।
कोई आइडिया कि ये कहाँ रहते हैं?
इनका मेरे को नहीं पता, क्योंकि मेरा प्रॉपर्टी का काम है। एक्चुअली मैं सुबह 11 बजे जाता हूँ और रात को 10-11 बजे वापस आता हूँ। दिल्ली में मेरा काम है, गोविंदपुरी कालका जी में। और ये जब ये लोग इनका स्टाफ आता है 10-11, मैं होता नहीं, कभी मिलते हैं नहीं, क्योंकि मेरा काम ही कुछ ऐसा है कि मैं 10-11 बजे सुबह निकलता हूँ और रात को 10 बजे के करीब आ जाता हूँ।
Srinagar, where the human network behind this module becomes visible. Houses demolished. Families questioned. Arrests increasing by the day.
And the forces blew up the house of Dr. Umar Nabi, a Red Fort bomber here in Koil Pulwama. We are showing the visuals of his residential house. He was trying to revive terror module of Jaish-e-Mohammed and Ansar Ghazwatul Hind. Now the question is that how he come in touch with the Jaish-e-Mohammed and also the ISI, the Pakistani terrorists, as per the reports suggesting that he had traveled to Turkey in 2022 along with 3 of his associates, doctors, and where he had met Okasa. There the plan was formed. It was he was regularly in touch with them on Telegram, Signal and Session, and therefrom all this planning started. In fact, now the DNA samples that has matched with his mother confirms his role, because he was the one who had carried recce not only around the Red Fort area but also one of the busiest crowd place in New Delhi. Soon after, the IED material like ammonium nitrate and the traces of RDX was found in Faridabad, and that too in a huge quantity. Multiple raids were carried by the joint security forces, the Jammu and Kashmir police, especially the Srinagar police. It is the one who was behind the entire operation. Dr. Muzammil, who comes from Koil Pulwama, to have been arrested along with Dr. Adil, who comes from Kulgam, because both the doctors have been in close contact with each other, and Dr. Adil was the one from whose locker this AK-47 was recovered, and that gave a clue to these people about their nefarious activities. In fact, now we are outside the residence of Dr. Adil and Muzaffar. Adil is already in the custody of J&K police, the Srinagar police, and now the Jammu and Kashmir police has requested Interpol, as they had approached Interpol to issue a red corner notice as well as the Muzaffar is concerned. Today we are showing you the visuals of this residence. This is located in Qazi Gund, Kulgam, where the Jammu and Kashmir police approached Interpol to issue a red corner notice against Dr. Muzaffar in connection with the interstate white-collar terror module. Muzaffar is rather a brother of Dr. Adil, who was among the 8, including the doctors arrested in the case related to Red Fort. Muzaffar's name surfaced during interrogation of these arrested. They said he was the part of the doctors' team that visited Turkey in 2021 along with Muzammil and Omar Ganai. Omar, who was driving the vehicle.
The Delhi blast trail opens up a second layer. The recruiters, Shaheen, Adil, and a radical Islamic cleric.
Just barely 20 meters away, the exact same spot where on 10th of November, 6:55 p.m., there was a blast in a Hyundai i20 by the conspiracy of the 4 major terrorist doctors, Dr. Adil, Dr. Mujammil, Dr. Shaheen and Dr. Umar. Umar is the same person who carried out this blast, and as you can see, now this area is being cordoned off again, this area is being barricaded again, and the same spot where you could see around 4 to 5 team members who are in a rigorous process of cleaning the divider, possibly cleaning the blood, the charcoal that came off when there was a blast. And you can also see that there is a water tanker to help to aid the process. There were constant collection of forensics by the Delhi Police Crime Branch FSL team, which was going on. But now we are showing you that still there are a lot of people with metal detectors who are detecting if there is any part which blew off in the blast from the cars whose carcass was there.
In Shopian, investigators questioned the family of cleric Irfan, arrested on the 18th of October, marking the first major breakthrough in the recruiter network.
कब ये शुरू हुआ, कब उनको लेके गए, क्या कुछ बताया था उन्होंने?
उसको ले गए 18 अक्टूबर को, 18 अक्टूबर रात के 9:30 बजे, 9:30 बजे। पुलिस वाले और फौजी थे, मिलकर थे। हाँ, वही ले गए। हमने उनको बोला इसको क्यों ले गए, इल्ज़ाम क्या है इसको। उन लोगों ने बोला उसको हम, आप क्या डीसी हैं, आपको बोलेंगे, इसको ले जाएंगे इस टाइम, कल उसको छोड़ेंगे।
Terror Dr. Shaheen's personal life, her disappearance patterns, her secrecy, her own family confirms changes they never understood.
देखिए मैं जितना जानता हूँ, देखिए जितना जानता मैं देखिए जितना जानता ना मैंने आपको बता दिया है ना। अब प्लीज
बस एक बात बताइए, बहन से बातचीत में इतने समय से नहीं थी क्यों? बस इतनी सी बात है।
अब मैं फोन करता था, वो फोन नहीं उठाती थी। अब भाई आपके परिवार में भी रहा होगा भाई, विवाद हर घर में रहता है।
The story repeats in Lucknow. Families learning from the police or from television with no hint that a terror conspiracy was unfolding at home.
क्या बहन का भाई का आपकी कश्मीर के लोगों से बातचीत थी? कोई जान पहचान? मुजम्मिल के बारे में कोई जानकारी?
नहीं, जितनी मीडिया में देखिए बातें दिखाई जा रही हैं वो मुझे आज पहली बार पता चल रही है। पहली बार पता चल रहा है मेरे को ये बात। ये बात नहीं, ये बात
तो ये हैरान करने वाली आप लोगों के लिए
नहीं। हाँ बिल्कुल
ठीक है, थैंक यू।
Neighbors are echoing a similar pattern. The isolation and a sudden break from routine. Listen to this.
बहन के बारे में बताइए, पूरा मामला उनकी बहन से जुड़ा हुआ है। आप कैसे जानते हैं, कब से देख रहे थे उनकी?
नहीं तो हम लोग हमसे तो काफ़ी बड़े हैं, वो हम लोग तो बचपन से देख रहे हैं उनको। बस शादी बाद कानपुर से शादी भी थी, उनका तलाक हो गया था। फिर हमारे ख्याल से वो जहाँ तक कंफर्म नहीं जाता, वो सऊदी में भी दुबई नौकरी की हैं। उसके बाद हमारे ख्याल से वो बॉम्बे चली गई। उसके बाद पता नहीं, मतलब बहुत कम हमने देखा।
And then comes a Kanpur-Lucknow link, where intelligence inputs first warned that radicalization was taking a new white-collar shape.
दिल्ली में बम ब्लास्ट हुआ। बम ब्लास्ट के बाद आरएसएस के कार्यालय को टारगेट करने की बात सामने आई है। कुछ ऐसे इनपुट्स मिले हैं कि जिसमें आरएसएस के कार्यालय को ये लोग कहीं न कहीं अपना निशाना बना सकते हैं, जिसको लेकर के जो सुरक्षा व्यवस्था है वो हाई अलर्ट पर है।
Saharanpur was the operational pit stop. Investigators call it the meeting ground for radicalized doctors.
यह सहारनपुर का देखिए वी ब्रॉस हॉस्पिटल, जहां पर डॉक्टर आदिल जो आतंकी था, जो जैश के संगठन से जुड़ा था, जो हथियारों की सप्लाई करता था, जो लोगों का ब्रेन वॉश करता था, वो यहां पर आकर सबसे पहले नौकरी किया। यहीं पर लोगों को लगातार वो मिलाने लगा और दिल्ली ब्लास्ट के 37 दिन पहले यहां पर सभी डॉक्टरों, जो आतंकियों की फौज है, वो यहां पर मुलाकात करती है। फिर उसके बाद स्क्रिप्ट पूरी तैयार की जाती है, पटकथा की आखिर कैसे पूरे देश भर में ब्लास्ट किए जाएं, धमाके किए जाएं।
This hospital where Adil worked became the convergence point, a location convenient for meetings, discreet conversations and coordinated planning.
कितनी गिरफ्तारियां हुई?
जी बिल्कुल, देखिए सहारनपुर से जम्मू कश्मीर पुलिस आई थी और आदिल को गिरफ्तार करके ले गई थी, लेकिन उसके बाद अगर देखा जाए तो आदिल की शादी में जो डॉक्टरों का स्टाफ, 4-5 डॉक्टरों का स्टाफ गया था, उनसे लगातार पूछताछ जारी है।
हर एक देखिए घरों के 2 दरवाजे।
Not far away lies another critical spot. Adil's rented home beside a mosque, a house with 2 exits, lanes without CCTV, and multiple rented units spread across the city.
प्लानिंग के जरिए यहाँ पर बुलाया जाए। यहाँ से ये देखिए, ये वो मस्जिद आसमा मस्जिद, जहाँ पर डॉक्टर आदिल किराए का मकान लेकर देखिए रोज नमाज पढ़ने के लिए आता था। लेकिन यहाँ पर गलियों में हर दिन लगभग 5 से 6 गाड़ियां आया करती थी उससे मुलाकात करने के लिए, जहाँ पर देखिए प्लानिंग की जा रही थी इस पूरे आतंकी घटनाक्रम को लेकर। हर एक देखिए घरों के 2 दरवाजे, ताकि कैसे एक तरफ से लोगों को अंदर बुलाया जाए, दूसरे तरफ से उन्हें निकाला जाए। अगर कोई जाँच अगर होती है तो उस बारे में भी देखिए किसी को यहाँ पर पता ना चले। लेकिन
Police say this is where the suicide bomb planning sessions were held, hidden in a neighborhood built for invisibility. By the time agencies traced Adil's October 31st flight from Delhi to Srinagar, the trail was already deepening.
We trace the journey of the Hyundai i20, which exploded outside gate number 1 of the Red Fort metro station. From its point of origin some 11 hours earlier to its final moments in Delhi just before the blast. This is the route that the investigators have mapped out so far.
नहीं साइड में क्या
Victims recount the horror. Streets splattered with blood. Chaos moments after the fireball.
मेरे सगे भाई है, मेरी बात हुई थी, मैंने भाई का फोन नहीं मिल रहा था, बहुत देर 11:15 बजे फोन मिला। मैं नागलोई से चल के यहाँ आ रहा हूँ, हॉस्पिटल में किसी ने प्रशासन ने कोई फोन उठाया और मेरे को बोला कि तुम हॉस्पिटल इमरजेंसी में जल्दी से आ जाओ। मैं यहाँ पहुँच गया, मेरा सगा भाई अंदर है, गेट पे अंदर नहीं जाने देते हैं। कैसे पता चलेगा? जब अंदर कोई जाने देंगे तभी पता चलेगा ना। मेरा सगा भाई अंदर बैठा है, मैं बाहर खड़ा हूँ। क्या मतलब कोई प्रशासन बताएगा कोई प्रशासन की क्या कंडीशन है?
Eyewitnesses described the blast shockwave, the sound, the smoke, the aftermath.
जितना था हमने देखा यहाँ पे खून वून काफ़ी लगे हुए थे, काफ़ी वो दिख रहे थे, बॉडी पड़ी हुई, काफ़ी कुछ चित्रे उड़े हुए दिख रहे थे, टुकड़े वगैरह इधर दिख रही थी। थोड़ी देर में काफ़ी एम्बुलेंस आई, वो आई, उन्होंने सारे टुकड़े वगैरह बटोरे, एक उसमें करके वो लोग ले गए।
धमाके की आवाज़ इतनी तेज़ थी, बहुत तेज़ थी। जब गाड़ी के शीशे टूटे मेरी के, मैंने देखा कि शीशे कैसे टूटे, गाड़ी के शीशे कैसे टूटे। जब आगे देखा शीशे उसके, तो जो गाड़ियों में मतलब उसके पास की गाड़ियों में आग लग हुई थी, तो हम भी गाड़ी की छोड़ के मतलब हम भी भाग गए।
भाई गाड़ी में बम था। किसकी गाड़ी में? जिंदगी में कार में। तो आप लोग वहीं खड़े थे? आप वहीं थे?
मैं उसके पीछे चल रहा था।
कार के? तो कितने लोग सवार थे उस गाड़ी में, कुछ पता चला?
धमाके की आवाज आई, 4-5 फिर एकदम कई जने वैसे जल गए, आसपास में जो थे वो।
कितनी गाड़ियाँ डैमेज हुई हैं यहाँ पे? कितनी?
2-3 गाड़ी।
वो जो कार सवार थे उनकी क्या हालत कैसी है?
तो गंभीर 8-10 तो गंभीर है, 20-25 जनों को वैसे चोट आई है उनके जैसे से।
कितने बजे घटना घटी?
7 बजे। 7 पुट्टे 7 में बम फट गया।
7 बजे
पुट्टे 7 में बस बम फट गया। मैं अपना दुकान वहीं पे था, मेरा दुकान।
कितनी गाड़ियाँ चपेट में आई इसके बम के?
जल गया है।
2 बस भी?
हाँ।
आवाज़ आई, धमाका हुआ, तो मैं दुकान पे बैठा था, पीछे मेरी दुकान है, यहीं पे दुकान है, यहीं पे, तो मैं चेयर पे बैठा हुआ था। एकदम से अचानक इतनी तेज धमाका हुआ कि मेरे लाइफ में इतनी तेज मैंने अपनी आवाज़ के भी नहीं सुना। धमाके के दहल पे मैं 3 बार गिरा हूँ, उठाऊँ फिर गिरा हूँ, उठा इसलिए धरती फटने वाला है, इतनी तेज धमाका हुई है। ठीक है, तो मैं दुकान छोड़ करके एकदम से भागा। मेरे साथ भी बहुत सारी पब्लिक भागी, एक पे एक पब्लिक गिर रही थी। उस टाइम ऐसा लग रहा था कि हम कुछ पल में दूसरा धमाका हुआ था, हम मरने वाले हैं।
Investigators say Umar Nabi used religious premises to evade surveillance, entering moments before the blast, disappearing behind blind spots.
Now seeing the action from the Pulwama tells you about the government's policy that there is zero tolerance for terror on the ground, and as per the sources we expect that more such action will be followed on ground.
Gujarat, where the terror module's most lethal plan was uncovered, a rise-in attack engineered by Ahmad Mohyuddin Syed, one of the most dangerous accused. Another module was at work.
भाई भी जिस तरीके से वो घर पर रेजिन ला करके और वो जो पल्प निकाले और उसमें एसीटोन मिलाए, तो उनको देखने से भी कोई ऐसा नहीं लग रहा था कि भाई को मालूम है। भाई को बताया गया कि ये पॉइज़न तुमको बनाना है और ला करके हमें देना है, ऐसा शायद उनको नहीं बोला गया। बस उनको ये बोला गया कि ये काम है, ये प्रोजेक्ट बनाना है आपको और आपके इतने अमाउंट आपको मिलेगा, ऐसा कुछ वो कहकर उनको अनजान इनोसेंट रखकर उनसे काम करवाया गया।
The Gujarat ATS confirms the material seized from his residence is now with forensic labs. Photos retrieved from his phone reveal step-by-step searches for resin synthesis. Investigators say instructions came from Pakistan from a handler known as Abu Khadija. A radical medical terror network built silently through trust, charity, education, and professional respect. Tonight, India has seen its blueprint, and the men and women who nearly pulled off the country's deadliest terror and bioterror incidents. As the investigation continues into the Jaish module, the network is still unraveling. But the cloak of white-collar jihadis in India now stands exposed. That investigation continues. Moving on, what happens when a family loses a child to an unpardonable crime and discovers that the remains of the child was in a drain? And then 19 years later, the man once sentenced to death walks free. What happens to the families of Nithari? Families who never healed and now find their old wounds rebruised. Nearly 2 decades after the crime that rocked the country, now Surendra Kohli has walked out of prison, and his release may close a long contested legal chapter, but reopening deep pain for the families of victims. Acquitted after courts flagged grave procedural lapses, unreliable evidence, Kohli's freedom in the Nithari killings raises hard questions about the system, the investigators, the judiciary, about how such lapses entered the investigation of one of India's most disturbing crime cases. And the haunting question that remains unanswered: if the accused walks free, then who killed the children of Nithari? Here's a report.
Nearly 2 decades after shocking Nithari killings, Surendra Kohli walked free Wednesday evening. Eyes on the crowd, greying hair visible, flanked by police and lawyers, he stepped into freedom. The release closes a long, controversial chapter in one of India's most heinous cases. But questions linger over justice, accountability, and the victims left behind. The Nithari killings shocked the nation in December 2006 after skeletal remains of children were found in a drain behind businessman Muninder Singh Pandher's house in Noida's Nithari village. Surendra Kohli, Pandher's domestic help, was accused of kidnapping, raping and murdering several children between 2005 and 2007, leading to 13 separate prosecutions. In the remaining 12 cases, both Kohli and Pandher were acquitted in October 2023 and July 2025. As the court found the confessions and alleged recoveries unreliable, marred by procedural lapses. The court cited procedural lapses and gaps in evidence, raising questions over the handling of one of India's most notorious child murder cases.
सुप्रीम कोर्ट द्वारा कोहली को जो एक सजा के रूप में हमारे कारागार में वो दंड के रूप में यहाँ सजा काट रहा था, उसमें क्विटेशन पिटीशन के अंतर्गत उसको बरी कर दिया गया है और बरी के जो आदेश है वो हमें प्राप्त हो गया है.
Looking at the residential area that once stood at the center of the Nithari investigation, the house where Surendra Kohli worked as a house help for Muninder Singh Pandher. This is the same house which was the focal point. Back in 2006, this location became the focus of a massive police and CBI operation after skeletal remains and personal belongings of missing children were recovered from the drains and empty plot. Multiple FIRs were filed linking the disappearances to this house. Kohli was arrested from here and Pandher was taken into custody soon after. Over the next few years, both men were charged in several cases of abduction, murder and destruction of evidence connected to what came to be known as the Nithari killings.
The question still looms over the families of the victims. Who killed our children?
पंडेर को जमानत मिली, वही हमें दुख हुआ. इसलिए अगर वो दोषी नहीं, एक तो केस नहीं पुलिस ने नहीं खोला, केस हमने खोला. 96 सिर हमने गिनती करके 49 थाने में दिए. अच्छा, ये सब कबूल किया पंडेर ने पुलिस वालों के सामने। पंडेर ने कबूल किया गलती हुई, माफ़ करो। अच्छा, अब फिर कोहली दोषी नहीं, पंडेर दोषी नहीं, पंडेर दोषी नहीं है तो इतने साल जेल में क्यों पुलिस ने रखा? क्यों रखा भाई? जो जिसने वो बेचारा कुछ किया जैसा नहीं है तो उसको जेल में क्यों बगैर प्रूफ के जेल में क्यों रखा? तो जिसने जेल में डाला हो उसे फांसी होनी चाहिए।
19 years long after the horror and still no closure. How did grave procedural lapses find their way into case handling such heinous, jarring killings? The murders of missing minors in broad daylight and their bodies discovered in the drains, and how those lapses paved the way for the accused to walk free.
Overgrown. Now this is the same Nithari house once occupied by Muninder Singh Pandey. This structure remains abandoned. Its charred walls, this dense overgrowth marking the spot from where police first recovered crucial evidence in the 2006 Nithari investigation. We'll also show you the drain from which the skeletal remains, the personal belongings, various body parts of the children that were missing from this village was found. This is the drain from where the police got their first evidence. Now this house has remained sealed and unused for years. This wall that you see here was once the gate.
Police enters the investigation, there is so much of already been messed up. And secondly, also forensics. We have been asking for it, and also there has been a lot of special requests from various kinds of quarters, but we don't have good effective forensics available within the vicinity of even our national capital region. So that's another thing. And also thirdly, that the human error, that a lot of it remains to be proven in the court. In any case, but in this case, of course, a lot of it was proved, and even at some stage he was going to be hanged. So that's one part of the whole story. The other is also about, the court's view matters a lot. Depends on who's really delivering this judgment,
A curative petition is an extraordinary remedy filed when there's a violation of natural justice. Curative petitions can only be filed after the review remedy is exhausted. They apply when facts indicate serious injustice or errors that led to an unfair outcome.
Look, in our Supreme Court, there are three kinds of petitions which we file in Supreme Court. One is a special lip petition, which we famously called it as SLP. When the SLP is dismissed or not allowed, then we file a review petition. That is a very exceptional thing. Generally, review petitions are very exceptional. But curative is the most extraordinary, exceptional situation when the curative petition is filed. The literal meaning of curative is to cure. Cure what? The big question is what to cure. Cure the procedural lapse or some judicial impropriety which has not been somehow taken care in the SLP stage or in review stage. But then I'm repeating, it's one of the most exceptional situations, very rare situations, when Supreme Court allows curative petition.
In a lot of these cases, family of victim always remains, one of the losers, because they always feel that it remained unresolved, they did not get the justice. And they also, in terms of emotional support, we don't have any system by which it is addressed that how they are going through, what kind of emotional trauma that they are going through, financial support. There's a lot of announcement. Even in cases of acid victim, we have seen that, it takes about 8 to 10 years before they got even a small little support that they got. And even in this case, all the parents are feeling totally lost, and they felt so much of report was there. Initially, we were all involved when we went to the spot, and we did a lot of, help, but eventually people forget about all this and they just let them suffer.
A case spanning over 2 decades, where the accused was once sentenced to death, now stands overturned after grave procedural lapses decades later. For the victims' families who have never healed from the loss, this development tears open old wounds.
Nearly 2 decades after the Nithari killings sent shockwaves across India, the case has now reached its final closure. This Tuesday, on November 11th, 2025, Surinder Kohli walked officially free after the Supreme Court has set aside its final conviction in the infamous Nithari killings. With this order, every case in which he was once sentenced, including multiple death penalties, now stands overturned. The court reiterated that the evidence used earlier was inadmissible, recoveries were unreliable, and the prosecution failed to establish guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Surinder Kohli, who has spent nearly 19 years in jail, is now officially acquitted, where Moninder Singh Pandel also stands legally acquitted. This order now marks the end of all criminal proceedings against both the men.
What message does this outcome send, and what does it leave the families with? How long will procedural lapses continue to cloud the truth and compromise the verdict?
Bangladesh stands at a knife's edge, a capital under lockdown and a former prime minister awaiting a historic verdict, and a nation bracing for a day that could alter its political future. Dhaka, a city of relentless motion otherwise, fell noticeably silent all of last week. School shut, streets thinned out, lockdown called by the now banned Awami League, signaling a country on pause. Suddenly, it's gone on pause and on high alert. Some are saying they're anticipating a terror attack. And all of this comes just over a year after the biggest political upheaval in Bangladesh in decades. The student-led so-called uprising of 24, regime change otherwise, the fall of Sheikh Hasina is what it led to, and the installation of Muhammad Yunus as an interim leader. But what has happened last week tells you something is changing. And as the tribunal prepares to deliver its judgment on Sheikh Hasina, who's in India, by the way, for alleged crimes against humanity. That's what they call it, crimes against humanity. Dhaka is bracing for impact. And as the International Tribunal counts down to November 17th, India is watching closely. Sheikh Hasina's fate, Bangladesh's stability, and the future of a relationship built over decades between India and Bangladesh all hang in the balance. Here's the long-form story on what has happened in Dhaka and what is to come.
Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, is in midst of a tense political crossroad. A city of constant motion felt noticeably quiet on Thursday, the 13th of November, as schools in Dhaka switched to online mode and traffic was thinner in the streets that usually teem with buses, rickshaws and pedestrians. The city was under a lockdown called by the now banned Awami League, led by the supporters of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, ahead of a tribunal verdict in her trial for the alleged crimes against humanity. Sheikh Hasina ruled Bangladesh for 15 years, and then in July 2024, Bangladesh saw a major student-led uprising over what they claimed was for government job quotas. In real, it was a regime change executed by Americans. University campuses across Bangladesh became centers of protest, demanding merit-based recruitment and an end to what students called entrenched political favoritism. The protests escalated and government forces cracked down with tear gas, rubber bullets and live ammunition. On August 5th, 2024, after weeks of violent clashes that left hundreds dead and thousands injured, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina resigned and fled to India. Her departure marked a seismic shift in Bangladeshi politics. Yunus, Nobel Peace Prize laureate, was installed as the head of an interim government just days later. After Yunus assumed power, his administration introduced the July National Charter, allegedly a roadmap for political reforms. The charter calls for major institutional changes, including limiting the Prime Minister's term, strengthening presidential powers, increasing women's representation, expanding fundamental rights, and enhancing the judiciary's independence. On November 13, 2025, Yunus announced that a referendum on the charter will be held on the same day as the next parliamentary elections.
আমরা সকল বিষয় বিবেচনা করে সিদ্ধান্ত নিয়েছি যে আগামী জাতীয় সংসদ নির্বাচনের দিনেই গণভোটের আয়োজন করা হবে। অর্থাৎ জাতীয় নির্বাচনের মতো গণভোটও ফেব্রুয়ারির প্রথমার্ধে একই দিনে অনুষ্ঠিত হবে। এতে সংস্কারের লক্ষ্য কোনোভাবে বাধাগ্রস্ত হবে না। নির্বাচন আরও উৎসবমুখর ও সাশ্রয়ী হবে। গণভোট অনুষ্ঠানের লক্ষ্যে উপযুক্ত সময়ে প্রয়োজনীয় আইন প্রণয়ন করা হবে।
He reiterated that holding both votes together would be cost efficient and would reinforce the reform process. Bangladesh is bracing for impact as the International Tribunal Court gears up to pronounce a verdict on November 17th. Bangladeshi journalist Salahuddin Shoaib Chaudhary says that the situation in the country remains tense as people do not know what to expect.
Sheikh Hasina faces total 583 cases, out of which she also faces 324 murder charges, and 27 of those cases are now pending with the International Crimes Tribunal. What we understand as journalists, that the architect prosecutors are looking for capital punishment. So possibly they are going to hand Sheikh Hasina either death penalty or lifetime imprisonment. So for a leader like Sheikh Hasina, who was former Prime Minister and who is heading one of the two largest parties in this country, of course the situation here is kind of, as I said, fearful. People are absolutely uncertain. They don't know what may happen.
As a verdict against Sheikh Hasina is awaited, Bangladesh braces for impact with more violence predicted.
The political climate in Bangladesh has been steadily worsening since last July. You know, the so-called spontaneous student uprising has very quickly been unmasked as a very carefully crafted, meticulously designed, to use the words of Muhammad Yunus himself, a meticulously designed regime change operation. This regime change operation since last August has been marked by increasing violence within the country, perpetrated more and more by the interim government and its various agencies, and together with this, a declining support for what the interim regime has in mind. One must understand that the real power behind the interim regime within Bangladesh is the Jamaat-e-Islami. And the Jamaat-e-Islami has declared, together with the individual advisors to Muhammad Yunus in his interim regime, that they want a caliphate in Bangladesh. They want Sharia law, and they have been moving steadily in that direction. We do know also that Pakistan has been, because Pakistan was the main conduit backed by external forces for the regime change operation, and they have been exerting themselves more and more, and Pakistani terrorist organizations like Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed have been openly trying to increase their influence in Bangladesh.
Over the recent months, political tension has translated into security crackdowns. In the days leading up to the lockdown on November 13th, Dhaka saw multiple violent incidents. Over 30 crude bombs exploded in different parts of the city. Buses and vehicles were set ablaze, and several government and private offices were torched. A firebomb was thrown at a government office in Gopalganj district, which is Hasina's ancestral home and a stronghold for a party. The government has pinned the blame of these violent attacks on Awami League. Amidst this, economy in Bangladesh is also reportedly collapsing under the Yunus administration and is now feared that local terrorist outfits are planning a terror attack in Bangladesh on November 17th. The same day, the verdict against Sheikh Hasina will be out.
As we know that during the last 15 months, Bangladesh did not receive even $1 as foreign investment. 6 million people have already become unemployed, factories are shut down, economy is collapsing, and to my understanding, the banks are becoming empty. So if the situation becomes further worsened on 17th of November, I think this is going to have a very bad impact for Bangladesh. At the same time, some of the local Islamist and jihadist outfits, with the collaboration of Pakistani ISIS, they are also plotting numerous terrorist projects in Bangladesh, including some terrorist plots eyeing on India.
As a verdict against Hasina is awaited, a question lurks. How does it impact India-Bangladesh relations given India's firm support for Sheikh Hasina?
So India has been carefully watching all these developments, and we feel, and I very strongly support what the government has been saying, that the answer to this is to have free, fair, inclusive and credible elections in Bangladesh. And there is no question of banning any political party from participating in these elections. The Yunus regime has tried to ban the activities of the Awami League, but clearly, as we have seen in the events over the last 2-3 days, that this has not succeeded at all. In fact, the support for the Awami League is still there and very strong. There is the other major party, the BNP, and they have now started expressing themselves, saying that they also would like the Awami League to participate, because the BNP, who had originally thought that they would be a natural successor to the Sheikh Hasina regime, the BNP is also split down the middle. There is a moderate faction of the BNP that fully supports the values of the liberation war, and there is a pro-Jamaat faction of the BNP, which is led by the hardliners, and they are determined to align with Jamaat. In any case, even if they win the election, they would align with Jamaat, and their candidates would, in any case, be supported by the Jamaat. So this is a very difficult situation, but if free, fair, inclusive and credible elections are held in Bangladesh, whichever party wins, there will be no problem, because India will be more than willing to do business with that party and to ensure that in Bangladesh we have a friendly government, because the people support the values of the liberation war. They support secularism and democracy in Bangladesh.
India's support for Hasina has always been overt, giving her shelter after she was ousted out of her own country. The lockdown, the arson, and demonstrations underscored the fragile balance between political protest, public order, and ongoing reforms. As the tribunal prepares to announce a verdict against Hasina and her fate hangs in balance, the nation waits and the city holds its breath.
The assault is proven in this case, and the victim even receives compensation. But the accused walks free. Rape proven, rapist walks free. Why? Because the identity of the alleged rapist could not be clearly established. And how does a case involving a minor, a serial sex offender of minors, reach this point where the crime is acknowledged and yet the perpetrator of the crime remains unpunished? It's one of the mysteries of Indian investigation and judiciary. In Mumbai, Rehan Qureshi, allegedly linked to not one or two but multiple sexual assault cases, most of them minors, has been acquitted in a 2017 sexual assault of a then minor. Not because the sexual assault didn't happen, but due to an allegedly flawed identification parade. So what failed? The investigation, the process, or the system meant to protect the most vulnerable? our children? Here's a report.
He's allegedly linked to several sexual assault cases. But in the alleged 2017 assault of a minor, Rehan Qureshi has been acquitted. Not for lack of allegations, but for an allegedly improper identification parade. Tonight, the big question: how does a child survivor walk away with compensation while the accused walks free? What exactly failed in between?
There are 22 similar cases against accused Rehan Qureshi. One of the case is that case. From this case, which is registered in Goregaon police station, the accused Rehan Qureshi acquitted on Tuesday.
A missing girl was found near her school after her mother raised the alarm. A young girl's testimony stood. The incident was deemed proven. Yet, the accused was acquitted. What collapsed? The evidence or the investigation?
Rehan Qureshi, a kidnapper and murderer of several minor girls, was acquitted in alleged rape case which registered in Goregaon police station. In this case, FIR was registered in 2017, and in this case, prosecution failed to prove charges against accused.
Republic spoke to the accused's lawyer Nazneen Khatri, who said off camera that her client is innocent. She added that all allegations against him are false. If the identification parade was flawed, who is accountable? And why was a case involving a minor handled with such alleged procedural lapses? The court says the prosecution proved the incident, but not the identity of the perpetrator. So where does that leave the child? And where does accountability lie?
I think that it is very shocking that we read in the media that the judge who was handling the case of POCSO, that is a offense of a sexual offense against the children, the offender who was charged for 21 serial cases against the child abuse has been acquitted, and the reason which is given in the judgment that there is no identification parade, which means that the accused was not identified by the child who was molested or who was sexually assaulted or raped or whatever it is. This creates a lot of doubt, and it causes the bad image of the police who conducted the investigation.
The assault on the child is proven. The perpetrator of the crime remains unidentified. The court acquits the accused and orders compensation for the victim. But where does this leave the child, the family, and justice?
Now the judge has given another relief to the child, that District Legal Services Authority should give compensation to the child, because the judge has admitted that a child was sexually abused and there is a mental trauma on the minds of small children. But I fail to understand how come the police has failed to take ample precaution that the offender should be identified by the small children. I think that this is a fit case where the appeal should be filed by the state government against this kind of a judgment where the offender is scot-free just because the investigating and technical lapses.
When an alleged offender with multiple sexual assault cases walks free due to lack of identification.
And that's it on this edition of the Long Form Story. It's been a long week, ladies and gentlemen, with elections and then the blast that took place on Monday. And it is going to be a long week ahead of us as well. We'll meet you again on the Long Form Story next Saturday. Thanks for watching.